Hello and welcome to today's episode of Served by SHFM, your food service hospitality podcast. The Society for Hospitality and Food Service Management is the only association focused on workplace hospitality and amenities in the food service industry. Hello and welcome back to Served by SHFM, your food service hospitality podcast. I'm your host, Michael Moore. And in today's episode, we're talking about the importance of chasing experiences and really how culture, how family, how all the things in our development play an important role in our personal development, obviously, but our professional one as well. And today's guest, I cannot say enough good things about. She's a rising star, trained executive chef, food experiences manager at ISS Guckenheimer, working for a prestigious tech company, and also a fellow resident of Colorado, which makes me happy. I like to keep it local on the podcast for once. I want to welcome Lauren Beckwith. Thanks for jumping on for us today.
Hey, Michael. It's so good to be here. How's it going?
I am good. And I really want to point out that I love working with you on SHFM projects because you're one of the few people that whenever something needs to be done or, a task needs to be accomplished or someone needs to go out on a limb and try something, it's like your hand goes up. It just makes life easier working on projects, knowing that there's somebody in there to, be enthusiastic about what comes next. So thank you. This is one more example of that. I know coming on here is never easy. You have stuff going on with your client, with your life. So thank you for taking the time out to join us.
Yeah, always excited to help out, especially if it means I get to post the Instagram stories for SHFM.
I also appreciate that. I did it once. I've not been asked back since for good reason. It was uncomfortable to say the least for everybody involved, including Instagram. I think they asked me to log out. So that's good. But some of the guests we've had on here have obviously unique backgrounds, unique experiences with food. And so my favorite part, honestly, of every episode is really getting to know the person behind the professional. So you see who they are in a conference or at work or at some association event, but getting to know their story is really unique. And yours is something that I feel like is one of those feel-good movies. Where it comes out and personal growth is just exploding around the middle, and it comes in the end, and you look back at it and you're like, oh, that was really nice. I feel good. So tell me, how did you start with food? What brought you into the world of hospitality of food service?
I'm glad that my background in food story gives you feel good vibes, because it kind of gives you motion sickness and a little bit of whiplash, but we like to keep you on your toes, right? So,
all right.
I grew up with a younger sibling that was allergic to everything, basically. So I wasn't exposed to a lot of different foods as a kid. But growing up, I had the opportunity to participate in my local 4-H chapter. So I scooped a lot of goat poop at the county fair, served a lot of pie. But that's really how I got into food. I took, cooking, baking, cake decorating projects through 4-H. I fell in love with agriculture and animals and just figuring out where our food came from. And I was totally hooked. From there, I always thought, I like cooking. Well, how fun would that be to be like a chef one day, where every day I just get to experiment and taste things and be really creative. And then I was like, okay, hold on a second, pump the brakes a little bit. I come from an Asian family, and sometimes you feel a little bit of cultural pressure to pursue more technical degrees, right? Like being an engineer or going into medicine, being a lawyer. And so it sort of was an internal struggle as I was growing up to, know I wanted to pursue food because it's so cool and it just lit up my world, but also knowing or feeling, at least, I don't know that anyone ever told me I had to go be a doctor, but feeling
it's just implied. It's like an inferred thing.
Right. Yeah. And so, funny enough, because of my love for agriculture, I found out about the University of California, Davis, and they have a food science program. And I was like, hey, there's an idea. the degree has science in the name, so that's got to be acceptable, but it also has food in the name. And so I set my sights on pursuing a degree in food science and technology, and that's what I did. So I attended college. I studied food science and technology, which is a lot more science than food. It was very, very hard, and I have so much respect for all of the food scientists out there.
What is a food scientist? For those of us that can't do basic math, and chemistry was uncomfortable for everyone. What is a food scientist? If you had to explain it to someone that, like me, that has no idea, what are we talking about?
I mean, like it's everything, right? It's if you want to see new innovative food products, it's the scientists understanding, the microbiology, the chemistry, the innovation, the technology piece. We want to make sure that our food is safe, right? So it's the people out there who are understanding, what are the different temperatures, what are the different pHs, what are the different hydration levels where bacteria can really grow or not. So food safety, food innovation, food science, food technology. I worked in research and development, so a lot more of sensory science and statistics. So I had a lot of experience with training consumer taste testing panels and helping folks train their palate to see if they could, detect saltiness, detect sweetness. If I might have worked for a ravioli company developing new ravioli flavors, and they might have been a product that should have a shelf life of 7 to 8 weeks, right? Using modified air packaging. Well, does that ravioli taste the same in week 6 as it does on week 1? So it's the people doing all of the science, math, everything, the fine tuning in the background so that you and I can have fantastic food experiences today.
That is one of those things that, again, culinary, hospitality, our industry has so many avenues that are outside of just classically trained chef operator. They're so interesting. I never thought about, someone having to taste test and panel week 1 versus week 6 on, ravioli or.
Yeah. And if it's a lobster ravioli on like week 8, you're like, please let there be visible mold because I don't really want to eat this.
Yeah. I guess you're playing the hand of God there a little bit in people's lives. But that's, and just the things like that, how you package it with modified air. It's like nitrogen and stuff like that, right? Or you're pumping it full of different non-oxidizers, growth inhibitors, that type of thing.
Yeah, so exactly. Like if you're not wanting to put any preservatives into your food products, you can adjust the levels of nitrogen in the air and the packaging to slow down the rate of oxidation. Wild. There are people though that are dedicating their lives so that you can have fresh tasting ravioli without preservatives.
Okay. So you started off in California shoveling goat poop, which you don't usually associate the two. You're more, surfing and the stereotypes of
glamorous Hollywood life.
Yes, you don't really say goat poop. Definitely, that's where I was going with it. But so you did that, and then you loved food, you wanted to go into culinary, but you had to kind of toe the line with family dynamics and your background. Which the only thing I can add to that is when I told my parents after undergrad that I was going to culinary school, I think the first words out of my dad's mouth were, "You were going to be very poor." And he was wrong. I mean, I made, culinary school, you're very, work in the line, dishwasher type of thing. But it's hard to explain, I think, to a lot of family dynamics, that passion behind something where yes, in a lot of previous generations, understandably, money was very, very important in everything, but so is loving what you do. So is, wanting to do something that maybe isn't necessarily in line with what they thought for you. So how did they react when you said, "I'm going to go be a food scientist," and you just mumbled food and said scientist? How did they react to that? Were they supportive, or was it still a tough conversation?
No, I think it was really supportive, and it's hard for me because now looking back, I'm like, maybe this cultural pressure was something that I made up in my head. I don't know, because look, I'm 4th generation Chinese American, right? Okay. And I think my family has assimilated to culture in the San Francisco Bay Area, quite well, where people are pursuing all different types of careers. My brother's a photographer, okay,
Okay.
right? Like brilliant photographer. He gets to go to like the Super Bowl and stuff. So he's super cool. But what I'm saying is I don't know that I had the same pressure that other folks, that might have come from a Chinese culture have had, but I might have just created that myself because my family was always really supportive of me. I think,
Yeah.
they always wanted me to work hard, to show up, to, try my hardest and, be the best person I can be. But never did they say, you can't go to culinary school. No, you can't pursue, an art background. But I think, after going through this science degree, which was grueling, I had a love because I love science and technology, absolutely. But I was still missing, that original spark that made me fall in love with food in the first place. And so I decided, I was like, I'm moving to Santa Cruz and I am going to Cabrillo College and I'm taking culinary classes at night. And that's what I did.
So you had a full-time job and doing culinary school at night, which either one of those alone is aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you go from there then? So you ended up obviously did you finish culinary school or was it? Yeah,
I
okay.
did. Yeah, so I was working my job I found on Craigslist, which was really cool. I
Actually.
was brokering snacks and beverages, driving all around the Bay Area, coming back to Santa Cruz at night, totally, beat. But, the folks that I met in culinary school and some people are able to attend, the prestigious CIA, which is super sparkly and nice. But I chose to pursue my culinary education at a community college and more of a vocational program because financially it made a lot of sense to me. And at first I felt kind of like, oh, I'm going to kind of like a B grade, program. But I have to say, the people I met there were so real. The experiences I had there, the instructors I had, top notch. So can't say enough great things about, some of those programs that might be perceived as, not the prestigious CIA.
I wish I had half of your insight when I went to culinary school because didn't know about for-profit. Just wasn't even a thing that registered with me. Loved my school, loved my experience, but again, I agree with you. I think it's 100% down to what you're willing to put into it, and that's what you're going to get back out of it. My culinary school did shortly after go under, so my prestigious degree is expensive. It was expensive. I paid it off in 2019. That felt good.
Yeah.
That took a long time. So yeah, you're doing things right from the beginning, I think. I mean, obviously super smart scientist, but still pursuing the passion, wants to go a different direction. Where did you get into, outside of culinary school? Where'd you get into kitchens? Where'd you get into the industry? What'd you do with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have to say, when I was pursuing my bachelor's in food science, there was a moment where I was pretty discouraged from pursuing the culinary field at all. And I was working in a restaurant, just bussing tables, expo, refilling waters, different things like that. And I saw a colleague of mine who was hired at the same time as me, and we were doing the same job, learning how to make a hollandaise sauce in the kitchen because crab cake, eggs Benedict, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh man, chef, like I'm ready, put me in. I want to try that. And he said, no, I don't let women, work back of house in my kitchen. And I was like, okay, that's messed up. And so it wasn't until a lot later after I had graduated culinary school when I did my externship where I finally felt a little bit of belonging because the chef of the cafe that I was doing my externship in happened to also be female and had created this amazing, inclusive, empowering culture in that space that made me feel like, okay, that other guy from the past who told me that when I was 18 years old, he's obviously wrong because I do have a place here.
I obviously have never run into that, but how did you handle something that's just, I'm gonna say the word stupid because it is, but how do you handle that? I mean, what does that do to you kind of on the inside, and how do you shake it off?
I didn't handle it well. I was 18, right? Now looking back, I think I'd have some words to say.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was, somebody in a leadership position telling me that because of who I am at birth, like I couldn't do something. And how unfair was that? It felt so unfair, but at the same time, I needed the job, I needed the money. So obviously I stayed and just did what was asked of me.
And the thing that blows my mind about that kind of mentality is I'd put almost every dollar I own to say if somebody asked that chef, "Oh, where'd you learn to cook?" "Oh, grandma."
Right?
Okay, well, I
Right?
feel like there's a hole in your logic there, sir. Okay, so you obviously was not a smooth path of acceptance and stuff like that that we want to see, stepping away from my hallmark theme for you. But let's get back to it.
Yeah.
When did you know, find yourself in kitchens full time, or did you go a different direction? Did that kind of push you out of the world of working in kitchens?
Yeah, I did my externship in a kitchen. So I was, I gave up my actual full-time job, brokering
Hmm.
snacks, driving all around. And I did my externship with the same client that I support now in one of their teaching kitchens and in one of their cafes. And like I said, it was just such a night and day experience, right? The
Yeah.
culture, I think, just makes all the difference. Having leaders in a place where they see differences in people
Hmm.
and see how that makes the workplace better
Hmm.
versus not as good, it drew me in, right? And so at the end of my externship, I was offered a job full time with the company. And instead of working in kitchens, they actually came to me and said, "Hey, we see your knowledge and experience in the back of house culinary world. We also see your knowledge and experience in more of like the food science world. And we see an opportunity for you to be kind of like that bridge between a lot of our business initiatives and our culinary team." And
Hmm.
wow, who am I? I'm just this extern that's only been here for a couple months. And to have a company come to you and say, "We recognize you have these skills, and these skills, and we're creating this position so that we can harness,
Yeah.
what you're able to contribute to help make our company better." So I worked in responsible business initiatives. So helping reduce food loss and waste in
Hmm.
our food service establishments, identifying new innovative, sustainable products and suppliers, launching new fun ingredients, procurement integrity, all of those things, which kind of combined my love of, new technology, new ingredients with implementing them in a food service establishment.
It's all the good things. It was all the fun things of food with a role that it's interesting, and awesome, like you said, that they created something or found you for something very unique like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it makes sense. Look at your background and the experiences that you had, and the very kind of, I think, to go into food science, the technical and analytical mind that you need for something like that blended well with the creativity that has to come with any kind of culinary training. So one thing that, and it almost leads us into our topic in a lot of ways that we haven't talked about yet, is travel and embracing experiences. And it's been a big part of your life. And I feel like it's coming up in the story. So what did you do? How did travel become kind of an influential piece of your personal and professional development?
Well, Michael Moore, it was a fine Saturday in the winter in California.
Ooh,
And
word picture. Go.
I was on a ski trip in beautiful Tahoe, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh. First of all, I'm really thankful that I've been able to experience these experiences because that's not the reality for everyone, right? So
Yeah.
living in California, spending time in Sacramento, Davis, knowing the Tahoe area for skiing, like fantastic. But I fell, not skiing, but on a ski trip. So I'm just going to say I fell skiing and I tore my ACL completely. So I was injured pretty badly. I
Yeah.
know it gives me the, like, I get this feeling.
EBGBs. Yeah.
Heebie-jeebies. So I fell. I tore my ACL. I had surgery and I was stuck. I was like, laying down. I was on painkillers. I was really uncomfortable. And I was just feeling super sorry for myself.
Hmm.
I watched a lot of Footloose and Dirty Dancing.
Naturally.
Any of those movies that like kind of have a lot of dancing and singing and make you feel good. And then it just hit me. And I was like, this might not being able to do anything, not being able to move around, that is the reality for some people. But for me, it is my reality for like the next 6 weeks. And beyond that, I think I have a responsibility to take advantage of this life, this body, my health, these opportunities that I've been given, and to make the most of it and to do what I can to make myself happy and fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I said, I am going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. If that doesn't get your butt in gear to like, really focus on your PT, your rehab, your health, I don't know what does.
That is aggressive. That is not approaching it with, half measures. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was like, fly 17 hours, to Tanzania, hike up a mountain where there's no oxygen. That's how I want to, live my life. But it was just this big goal that I just pulled out of nowhere because, who does that? Like really cool people do that. And I want to be really cool. And I really want to push myself, my body, my mind to accomplish something really big that I haven't thought of before.
That is really big. And okay, so we talked about you planning to do it. What happened? Did you do it? Obviously you came back, so nothing too bad happened. So I assume you tested raviolis along the way.
Yeah. So I, to make sure that I would do it, I connected with the Make-A-Wish Foundation and I made a pledge to them that I was going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and raise funds for the Make-A-Wish Foundation along the way. And that sort of like solidified the fact that I had to get my butt to the top of that mountain.
Now you have to do it. You can't walk away from that.
You have to do it. And, I got my community involved. And like, I think we forget sometimes that we're not alone, right? We have a community, whether it's by blood or, our friend, our workplace community. And I got my community involved. I raised money. I told them, okay, I want a penny for every single foot of elevation, I'm going to climb. And so I set myself, or like how many nights I'm spending on the mountain. So I spent 4 days walking up Mount Kilimanjaro and I summited at sunrise, which is pretty magical.
Wow. Okay. So you did something huge. You did something amazing. You've reached this literal peak. And also, I guess, the, metaphorical peak of what you're doing right now in your career. How did that impact you? I feel like that changed something fundamentally for you.
Absolutely. I think, I found that I had to let go of that feeling I was harboring of, okay, I have this, pressure from who, I don't know, but there's this pressure to succeed professionally, right? Climb that corporate ladder and just really focus on my profession, especially in the Bay Area. I mean, everywhere, you're surrounded by brilliant people. I came into the Rising Stars group and I was like, oh gosh, like, do I even belong here? Right. All of you folks are
they let me in. So.
Brilliant. Yeah. But, I think at that moment I realized like how much fulfillment and how many life skills I was able to gain through experience that could ultimately make me better at my job, right? I think, as I knew I wanted to go into management eventually, realizing that, how I act, my emotions, my, the energy I'm giving off, that's contagious. Like I need to be in a good place so that I can show up to help my fellow team members grow in their roles as well. And so it was just this experience and this feeling and, the confidence that I was able to gain by doing, something like this that I brought back. And I said, okay, no, it's not just about travel, right? It's about those experiences and harnessing those feelings and feeling empowered. Now, how can I take that back and apply it in my personal life, in my professional life?
And how did that change, the direction you were in? So you were, if I remember right, you're still in the role of procurement, being responsible business. Yeah. Did you go back and you have these thoughts that you're talking about and how you think it should change the experience for others as well. But how did it like impact your career path? Did something change from there? Or did you just go back to your job and slowly implement it? How did that work?
I did go back to my job. I always felt like a little bit of that imposter syndrome, right? Like I felt like this amazing opportunity was like given to me and like, how am I ever going to be worthy of this? So I think at that point I kind of finally realized that I'm here for a reason, right? There's obviously things that I am doing that other people are recognizing, where they know that I will succeed. And so I kind of brought that same confidence back with me. And I think it did make me better, right? When I had an idea, instead of saying like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to tell anyone about this idea, I'm just going to let it like fizzle out.
Mm-hmm.
I'd raise my hand and I'd say, oh, hey, I think we should try X, Y, Z.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one of those, I mean, talking about chasing an experience and actually coming back and not just letting it be a brief moment of enlightenment, making it be something that's really changing who you are. That I don't know. That's almost a bigger step than the climbing, Mount Kilimanjaro itself, if that makes sense. Because it's one thing to go on an adventure and be done with it because it's a limited thing, But if you come back and take what you did and really change the way you view your profession and your career development, it's completely different because you are right. Society, for the most part, tells you this is what you got to do. You work here, you start here, and then you climb to this, and then you will become middle management, and you work your way up and retire and die. But it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, I feel like in our conversations, the things that I took away from it are that you took time to chase experiences for yourself. Like I believe you took a cooking class in India. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of things that I never thought I would, right? I would see pictures of people doing things on the internet, on social media, and think, wow, that is so cool for them. And then, I have a close family member who has various health conditions that limits what they're able to do. And again, it was like that second kick, right? When I was lying in my bed feeling bad for myself for my torn ACL, it was that second kick to say, there are all these opportunities that I have because I'm in a position where, I didn't have a family of my own at the time. I am able-bodied, which I'm so thankful for. Why shouldn't that be me? Why shouldn't I be taking advantage of these opportunities to go experience these things? Because after having that Kilimanjaro experience, I realized how important taking that time for myself was so that I could be stronger in my personal and professional life. So yeah, even though I had a job I loved, I quit and I experienced what I call my eat, pray, love stage in life, right? And I think you can probably assume where
I have
going.
a montage in my head right now. It's
It's not nearly as classy as Julia, but I went to New Zealand for a year, and that kind of again spurred my love of adventure travel. I trekked for 11 days in a row with a backpack on my back. I met incredible people. I had to hitchhike twice. I met the New Zealand Ultimate Frisbee team on the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I met some just really great influential people during my time there. It's where I got my first job as a chef, actually.
Okay.
Did I tell you this?
No, I don't think so.
Professional chef in New Zealand?
I don't think so.
I didn't tell you
that. And people here need to know about it. So let's hear about this personal chefing in New Zealand experience.
So it started on a windy morning at the base of Mount Cook.
Naturally, that's where I thought the story would start. Go on.
No, so when I was in New Zealand, I met some very, very dear friends, and they're still my really good friends to me this day. But I was trekking out there. There's a lot of huts where you hike hut to hut to hut. So one night I met a family, also from the U.S., and we just got to chatting. We got to know each other. We exchanged information so that I could meet up with them later. And then the next day we were hiking back down the mountain. And I saw one of the people I had met fall down a very high cliff.
Okay.
Which
go on.
Yeah. And I don't have search and rescue experience. It was pretty scary. So I called search and rescue. They came. It was the mom that I had met who had given me her number the night before to meet up and hang out and cook some food. And she luckily was okay. She had but I texted her later saying, hey, if there's something that I can help you with, in the next coming weeks, like, let me know. She's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
come stay with us. And I was like, okay. So then I went to go visit them, and it turns out this family is on this epic journey for a year where the dad is writing a new book, the kids are just going to school in a different place. How cool is that? But I ended up helping out with cooking, going to the farmer's market, doing all the shopping, teaching them how to make nutritious meals. And so that was my real first job, kind of in a chef role.
You may be the only person in history that's become a personal chef because you watched someone you met fall off a cliff and somehow had the state of mind and ability to react and call the appropriate authorities. I feel like I would just cry and hurl my phone off a cliff too. But you got them help, and then they're like, "Well, come cook for us. Come live with us."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's not. I don't even know if that's chasing an experience, much more embracing one. But that's incredible. And how long did you do that for? Did you say?
8 months, almost a year. But I mean, like through that, I met this mountain bike community, and I met this other woman who started a granola company. And then she asked me to help with her granola company. So I wasn't going to New Zealand looking for work
Yeah.
per se, right? But these opportunities just kept popping up. And I
Mm-hmm.
think at this point in my life, I was ready to say yes to them. Right? Like if
Wow.
I was still in
That's an
my,
interesting point.
climb the corporate ladder
Yeah.
mindset, I wouldn't have been as open to saying yes to these experiences. And I know for a fact that they have made me a better, human being, partner, daughter, sister, and employee. So I'm just really glad that I was in the mindset and ready to say yes to those experiences.
Wow. So how do you take everything that you learned and bring it back to the rest of your team to make them better, more supported? How does that work?
Ooh, I always tell my team to take all of their paid time off, right?
Yes.
But it's not just about like these big grand vacations, these big grand
Mm-hmm.
adventures. It's about identifying what fuels you, what drives you,
Yeah.
right? Like, what do you need to wake up every morning and feel that fire to like do something, right? So one of my team members, if he's into, going to different Renaissance festivals or a specific game or different animals or other physical activities, right? Like me understanding obviously their professional aspirations is really important, but likewise, like me understanding what drives them to be the best person they can be, like through what they like to do, through what they aspire to be, through what maybe they don't like, right? Like me really understanding my team members helps
Yeah.
me position myself to encourage them to do the things that really excite them, to push them into experiences at work that maybe they feel a little timid about, but because I know them so well, I know that they'll succeed, right? And they
Yeah.
feel that they can trust me because I've taken that time to understand what their passions are, and they trust me that even though
Yeah.
I'm pushing them into something a little bit more uncomfortable, it's probably going to be okay at the end.
Because I mean, and I think knowing that you're supported top down makes all the difference in the world for taking those risks and raising, like, to your point, and I think where we even started this conversation is finding the confidence to know that if you raise your hand and say something, that whatever comes out is going to be taken seriously and considered. And yeah, they're not everything's going to be the next big thing, but it might. And just
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you're not going to be looked at differently or criticized or anything for being brave enough to speak up. I think that's like 80% of management in a lot of ways. It's impossible to do sometimes, but it's incredible when you can pull it off. So let's look back, and obviously you've done a lot, and I don't know that you'll have too much to say, but if you could talk to the Lauren starting off shoveling, you know, goat poop and looking forward at what comes next, is there something you'd say to her in that moment? If you had just a couple sentences that you could reach back through time and impart wisdom on that, Lauren, what would you say to him?
Don't shovel and twist at the same time.
Practical advice. All right. Fair
That's
enough.
no. I will say that the technique and the muscle memory I've developed has helped with the shoveling snow in Colorado these days. So
Hey, perfect. I'll take it. I love it.
no, I would say I spent a lot of time stressing that I was tanking my career. Right, every
Hmm.
time, and like when I mentioned earlier, kind of like that whiplash or motion sickness from just the pivots that I've taken at the time as I was going through those. I was thinking, this is it, like this is the end for me.
Hmm.
Why am I doing this? I'm throwing so many great things away that I have going to just try what? To try to live in New Zealand. I'm throwing
Yeah.
away my full-time job to do an internship, right? And I just harbored so much anxiety, so much stress
Yeah.
about making the wrong choice. So I think what I would say to past Lauren is that maybe there is no right choice at the
Hmm.
time, right? But you have to just think about you. You have to know yourself and you have to pursue that choice that you're driven towards, right? It might not
Yeah.
seem like the right choice on paper at the time, but now looking back, hindsight 2020, like I made all the right choices.
That's so maybe you can take the opportunity not to say anything at all. I mean, it sounds like, yeah, they're terrifying, but you did everything that you should have done to get to where you are. And I'm just excited to see what comes next with that mentality. And knowing what I know about you now, and that, if you do drop off the radar for a while, you're probably doing something pretty awesome. And I'll be excited to see what Lauren comes back after that version's ready. Well, I
I don't
want to
know.
say
Where are you going next? Where should I go next? I don't know.
those are all the questions that, I think only time and a lot of risk can answer. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you for jumping on and spending your time with us. And is there anything else before, I sign off today that you want to say to our listeners?
I just want to say that it took me a long time to want to speak about that self doubt that I felt,
Hmm.
right? And I think it was this community in the food service industry that we're cultivating and this culture that has been shifted to make it a safe space to say, sometimes I'm tired of fighting, right? Sometimes I do feel scared. Sometimes I do doubt myself. And
Hmm.
it's because of this shift in our industry that makes me feel okay coming to be transparent and open with you. And I do that in an effort to make it okay for other people currently in the industry and for
Hmm.
people who are just entering into our industry. And I know that this shift and the work that we're doing to create a more inclusive and equitable culture is going to rocket us into the future, right? I
Yeah.
think historically we've seen the food service, hospitality industry felt like it was a little bit behind, right? Like it was a
Yeah.
little bit old school, especially a female culinarian, right?
Yeah.
But now I feel like there's programs like this, right? Where we
Hmm.
are actively building and working to create that culture. And as we foster that sense of diverse membership here,
Yeah.
like that's going to catalyze all of the innovation for our industry. And I'm so excited to see it.
And that's a wonderful point. If anyone listening isn't involved or doesn't know about our DE&I council or committee rather, or the one where you work, if there isn't one, there's been a lot of people on here that have started one, that are actively involved in one, that can be a great resource for helping you find support that you need within your own workspace, within your own community, any of those things. They can give you, I think, the tools. And, obviously we have Lauren on with us today, who's a wonderful resource. And, how can I get started? What's the first step? What can I do? I would say, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll make sure that Lauren's contact information is available, and the leadership at SHFM, Sharon and everyone involved, are really active in this space. So don't hesitate to reach out to anyone with questions, or if you just want to get active. It all takes, you can just raise your hand. All I got to say is raise your hand. So, with that, I want to address a bittersweet moment in that this is our final episode of Served by SHFM, at least for now. So I want to say thank you for everyone that supported the podcast, that signed in to listen, that, sent notes of thank you for Danny for helping to get off the ground, everyone at FSA and SHFM for producing and putting up with me and scheduling and all the good things that came along with it. So I don't know that it's goodbye, but it is, I will see you around, at least for now. So this is Served by SHFM, and thank you everyone for listening in. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Served by SHFM, your food service hospitality podcast. Please keep in mind that the views and opinions expressed on today's episode are not necessarily those of SHFM or any of its members.